So the G7 summit in Canada failed to produce a joint statement on the Russia-Ukraine war due to US resistance under President Trump, who opposed harsh language against Russia to avoid jeopardizing negotiations with Putin. The problem is, there are no negotiations as Trump has dismantled the team that was responsible for developing the negotiating strategy. So because of Trump, we ended up with a chair's summary that couldn't have been more limp-dicked. The summary noted support for Trump's peace efforts, which I don't know why they would even note that because the peace efforts were a complete failure. Stop bending the knee to the United States and Trump. We clearly are not in a position to be the moral authority on anything right now, given our leadership. So when you reinforce the notion that what Trump is doing is correct, he's going to believe it. And he's going to continue doing it and continue with these stupid foreign policies. I mean, the guy overtly said that Russia should not have been ejected from the G8, and had they not been ejected from the G8, the war would have never started. He completely disregards the fact that Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014 before they were ejected from the G8. Oh, and when he said that, not a single other G7 leader corrected him. You all just stood there awkwardly smiling, knowing it was fully incorrect. Side note here, Trump even mused about creating a G9 with China despite the fact that he campaigned on being anti-China. So for the record here, MAGA, we have a president who is ramping up for war with Iran, hasn't released the Epstein list, and is rewarding Russia as well as China. I mean, is this what you voted for? On the bright side, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced a $1.5 billion package in new Canadian military aid and $1.8 billion in loans for Ukraine, plus sanctions on 20 Russian oil tankers and related companies. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer pushed for a lower Russian oil price cap from $60 to $45 a barrel, but Trump blocked it, citing the Israel-Iran conflict and what he says are already high sanctions costs against Russia impacting the rest of the world. So the summit exposed G7 disunity, which, by the way, Putin loves. Never mind the optics of Trump's early departure and his refusal to meet with Zelensky, highlighting his prioritization of Russia over Ukraine. Meanwhile, his administration's private demand that Ukraine refrain from targeting Russian energy infrastructure is a disgraceful concession to Putin. President Zelensky confirmed this stance in a recent social media post that said, quote, "Today, the Russians launched a stone-cold combined attack on our energy infrastructure. This is a spit in the face of everything the international community is trying to do to stop this war." It happened right after Putin's conversation with Trump, after the Americans asked us not to strike Russian energy facilities. At the same time, Putin tries to portray himself as a mediator in the Middle East and assist his accomplices in Tehran. This level of cynicism is staggering, end quote. And you know what? Zelensky is right. Trump's adoption of this spineless US policy, which carried over from Biden, reveals Trump's both-sidism as a complete sham. Trump will sit there and say, "I don't like what Ukraine is doing," and then adds, "Oh yeah, but I also don't like what Russia is doing either." However, his actions expose the truth. He shackles Ukraine while giving Putin free rein to devastate civilian targets. Russia's massive strike that hit and killed many civilians, suspiciously timed after Trump's call with Putin, met only with hollow peace talks from Trump's team, leaving Ukraine defenseless against Moscow's aggression. And Putin's doing this to show Trump who's boss, essentially. He'll get off the phone with Trump, having said whatever is being said, having stroked Trump's ego sufficiently enough to continue doing what he wants, and then within minutes conducts egregious strikes against Ukraine, knowing full well that Trump will be a good lapdog. Trump's policy hands Putin a free pass, shielding Russia's oil and gas revenues by blocking Ukraine from striking war-critical energy assets. While Ukraine's cities burn under Russian attacks, Trump lectures Kyiv on restraint, which, to me, is an absolute betrayal, not any form of leadership. Zelensky's post that I talked about just a bit ago exposes the hypocrisy here. Putin bombs Ukraine's grid, yet Trump protects Russia's infrastructure and pushes empty peace talks. So now, at this point, Ukraine just must defy Trump's cowardice, striking refineries, depots, pipelines, whatever. For every Russian missile that cripples Putin's war machine, it will force Trump to confront his lopsided stance. Which means as things get tougher on the world stage, Trump is going to have to make a decision. Pressure Putin or watch Russia's economy collapse. And one silver lining in not receiving aid from the US anymore is they don't need Trump's approval. So get after it. Meanwhile, while most G7 leaders meekly stood there looking at their feet as Trump spewed idiocies, French President Emmanuel Macron at least is somewhat fighting back. On April 23rd, he rejected U.S. suggestions about Ukraine ceding Crimea, stating Zelensky can't negotiate under bombardment. That forced Trump's team to backtrack. Before the G7 summit, Macron preempted Trump's Greenland distraction, showing strategic savvy in that regard. And a lot of this blocking that was done by France and somewhat by Canada is the reason Trump bailed on the summit. The thing is, Trump latches on and idolizes strong men, no matter how evil they are. So no wonder he wants nothing to do with the majority of the G7 and their incessant hand-wringing. The G7, or even the G7 minus the US, starting today, must slash the Russian oil price cap from $60 to $45, dismissing Trump's weak excuses tied to the Israel-Iran war. Then encourage Ukraine to hit Russian energy assets, especially if Putin keeps bombing civilians. Trump's refusal to hold Moscow accountable demands a response. The West must call out his gutless policies and demand a clear endgame from Putin. Otherwise, they must take the gloves off of Ukraine, and they themselves must apply meaningful, forceful, painful countermeasures to bring Putin to heel.